بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. I testify that there is no true God worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad is Allah's true slave and messenger. May Allah's salah and salam be upon the noble Prophet, the believers of his family, and the noble companions, and those who follow on their path until the day of resurrection. This is part 2 concerning the subject on the qualities of al-Mu'mineen Aisha, the mother of the believers, Aisha. May Allah be pleased with her and her father. As you heard in part 1, Aisha got married to the Prophet ﷺ when she was 9 years of age. This matter is taken by the enemies of Islam as a means to slander and speak ill about the Prophet ﷺ, saying that he ﷺ got married to children. We know that the commencement of the marriage took place when she was 9 years of age, and from their slander is that they accused the Prophet ﷺ of uncontrolled sexual desires, but the fact is that, number one, had this been the case with respect to the enemies of Islam at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, who stood up in opposition to Islam and who would have loved to find in that element an excuse to refute the Prophet ﷺ and to nullify the honor of his character, they would have used this matter against the Prophet ﷺ. However, the fact that they had no problem with it, and the news of this marriage was just like any other news, and they didn't denounce this marriage at all. In fact, they knew before that she was mentioned before marrying the Prophet ﷺ. Her name was mentioned for engagement with Jubair bin Mut'im bin Adi. How could they even deny that when they knew well that she was not the only young girl getting married at that age to an old man, and she was certainly not the last one? How could they deny that when they knew that Aisha was growing physically like many of her young age from the Arab girls in their times? Something which prompted one of the Orientalists to speak fairly after he visited the Arabian Peninsula. And this Orientalists is boldly in his book Al-Rasul, the Messenger. When he checked this matter, he said that some historians looked at this from the angle of the contemporary societies they live in. They didn't even put into consideration that this was even a habit in Asia. They didn't even think that this was still going on in Eastern Europe, and that it was even natural in Spain and Portugal only till recently. So from these angles, this matter is refuted, and the stressing on it by some only reflects hate. And when that is the case, then take off your hands, because you can deal with that in a rationalistic matter with them. This is the first point from the side of those who are filled with hate against Islam and the Prophet ﷺ in particular. From another angle, there is even, and this is something some of you may not even imagine, there is even worse than the accusations of those who don't ascribe to Islam. There are those who claim Islam from the deviant rejectionists, the Rafida, who went to what can be easily described as unbelievable slander against al-Mu'mineen Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her and her father, reflecting even deeper hate against the Siddiqa, the truthful one, the daughter of As-Siddiq, the truthful father, and the beloved one, the daughter of the beloved one, the pure, declared innocent from above 7 heavens, Aisha, who occupied the Prophet ﷺ's heart in love. And whom the Prophet ﷺ described that the divine inspiration never came to him while he was under the blanket of any of his wives except Aisha. And on that he said don't trouble me by harming Aisha. For by Allah the divine inspiration never come to me while I was under the blanket of any woman amongst you except Aisha. As in Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 5, hadith number 119. Aisha. His wife in this life and his wife in the hereafter, as in the authentic hadith reported in al-Bukhari. Aisha, whose saliva mixed with the Prophet's saliva during his death. Aisha, who cared for him during the agonies of death, with his head alayhi salatu wassalam leaning against her chest. The beloved one, may Allah be pleased with her. Those rejectionists hate Aisha. This is exemplified in their harm and their accusation of her in a matter which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared her innocent of in verses recited until the day of resurrection. They claimed that Aisha is kafir and that she is from the dwellers of hell. They even twisted the Quran to conclude this. Take for example what they did to Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, verse 92, regarding the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّتِي نَقَضَتْ غَزْلَهَا مِنْ بَعْدِ قُوَّةٍ أَنْكَاثًا. And be not like her who undoes the thread which she has spun after it has become strong, by taking your oaths a means of deception among yourselves, lest a nation may be more numerous than other nation. They twisted this and they said that this her here refers to Aisha, turned away from Iman to Kufr. Yet this is an example, a parable is given concerning a woman spinning and then undo the thread. This is in reference to breaking the oaths and the covenants, and this is in their books like Tafsir al-Ayashi and Bihar al-Anwar lil-Majlisi. And they claimed that Aisha has a special door to hell where she will enter through. In Al-Burhan lil-Bahrani and Bihar al-Anwar lil-Majlisi and Tafsir al-Ayashi, they said that concerning the verse in the Quran in chapter 15 verse 44 describing hell, لها سبعة أبواب. Hell has 7 gates. For each of those gates is a special class of sinners aside.